Hello and welcome to Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started. Our catalyzing statement is a successful entrepreneur inside of every business. Enjoy this module. Hello and welcome to this module. What is business strategy really? And you know, Rick and I had quite a bit of discussion about this over some days because there's a lot of confusion about this, I would say, a lot of points of view. I actually went online and started reading different people's context for this. They disagree with each other. And this is the core of a business strategy. This is basically the soul of its existence in many respects, yet there's a lot of confusion between objectives, catalyzing statement, vision, purpose, tactics, strategy, how all this stuff comes together. And this particular module is about strategy. We might have to talk a little bit about the other things to make the distinction. But the bottom line is, Rick has got a very firm orientation as to what this is. And so we kind of like play devil's advocate, and I try to beat things up a little bit here. But he's very focused on exactly what business strategy is and why it's important. So tell him about it.
Well, in the context of this program and in business in general, what I want to do is focus us down on strategy in this context that I'm about to explain. If you're about to set out on a new business venture, and I don't care, Patrick, if it's a manufacturing facility or a doctor's office or any type of business really, the first thing you want to understand is the purpose of the business. What is the purpose? And again, it doesn't matter if you're a sole operator or you envision on being the next Bill Gates. What is your purpose? Then you take your purpose and you find out what is the get to? What is the catalyzing statement? What are we trying to do? And to use the Gates example, his purpose was to build the world's best software at the time. His catalyzing statement was, I envision a world with a computer on every desktop. Then the next thing is strategy. What is our permanent business strategy? And I think too often, and we've both experienced this, people start a business before they have the strategy locked down. And what's happening is you change and change and change and change. And if you happen to stumble upon the best strategy and stick with it, that's when you find success. What Patrick and I are advocating with this module is that you do that now and you make it permanent. So again, purpose, catalyzing statement. Number 3, strategy. Number 4, objectives. What are the objectives that you're going to put in place, both long-term and short-term, and in order to accomplish that strategy?
Right.
And then Patrick's favorite point of all of this is tactics. What tactics are you going to employ to accomplish those objectives, which accomplish the strategy, which follow the catalyzing statement, which fulfill on your purpose? I wanted to explain that because I do not want there to be any confusion, and the implementation guide will show you how this sequence works. But the confusing part often is, what are we really talking about? I want to make it crystal clear that the only thing we're talking about is number 3 on that sequence, which is strategy. So let me simplify it for you. And one of the reasons why I like this module, Patrick, is this really is an accelerating business principle, which is what year 2 is about. This definitely accelerates all of the principles that you learned in the foundational year 1 section. And it's simple, it's probable, and it's leverageable. So here's business strategy, the finishing school way, according to Patrick and Rick. Number 1, what do you make in order to sell? Is it a product? Is it a service? What is it? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. You have to define what it is crystal clear. Number 2, how do you sell it? i.e., by what channels will you sell and deliver it? And in that second question encompasses marketing and delivery channels. And then third, to whom do you sell it? Crystal clear. What customer do you sell it to? And so I think the best way to walk them through is by way of example, and maybe you could pull some of these questions out of me, but let's start with Southwest Airlines. The reason why Southwest Airlines is the most profitable airline in history. In fact, the market capitalization of Southwest Airlines is larger, as of this video being recorded, than the next 5 airlines combined. People don't realize that. They think of Southwest Airlines as a small company. They've been massively successful. In fact, they're one of the top 5 performing stocks of all stocks in the United States for the last 40 years. Yes, I said that correctly. One of the top 5. And you have to think about some of the companies that have been around during the last 40 years, starting with Microsoft. Think about that. An airline, a unionized industry with gas prices that are unpredictable, with customers that are fickle as could be, and they could have the most successful run of many thousands of other companies that we would envision are more successful than them. So yes, Southwest Airlines is successful, in my opinion, because they understood those 3 things that we talked about as it relates to strategy. What are we selling? How are we delivering it? And to whom are we selling it to?
I think that's really foundational questions. I think a problem people have, especially entrepreneurs, because they get so in love with their ideas, so in love with their product or service. My bias looking at chiropractic, because I'm a chiropractor in my background, having run a chiropractic practice before I got into other entrepreneurial businesses after practice, was always everybody needs a chiropractor. Everybody should go to one. Everybody needs to come in and be my patient because I can really help them with what I do. So I don't clearly define a strategy because trying to get something to everyone is not a strategy. Not identifying who your ideal patient is, who your ideal customer is, who the people are that can most subscribe or benefit. For example, if you're in a local business, in a local community like a practice, a doctor's office, a real estate office, whatever it might be, well, everyone can't be your customer because your patrons come from the local marketplace. And then you'd say, can everybody in this marketplace really be my customer? And the answer is no, you don't have the capacity for that the way that your business is probably structured. So how would you then identify who are the people that we want to speak to most? Going back to Rick's example of Southwest, Southwest didn't say we want everybody who flies to fly with us. They had a particular way to go to the marketplace and say, here is the person, here is the customer that will select Southwest over others because of our particular way of doing business and our particular business strategy. So I think the who is something that is sometimes underlooked. I don't want to say overlooked, it's underlooked. People kind of give it some thought, but they don't really pay attention to truly identifying who is our ideal customer, client, patient, what have you.
That's interesting that you brought that up, and here's why. Once you pick a strategy, it has to be permanent for your business for that time being. Now, if your strategy after 3 years you realize the market isn't embracing it and you want to adjust it, that's fine. But what most companies do, big and small, is they're constantly changing their strategy. What makes a strategy, when it's used effectively, what makes it work is a company is crystal clear who they say yes to and who they say no to. There's a very famous story about Herb Kelleher, who's the CEO of Southwest Airlines. A customer flew a Southwest Airlines flight, and when the flight attendant was making the safety announcements, the flight attendant broke into a rap song about the safety precautions. And the customer was severely offended by this, and in fact wrote a really long letter to Southwest Airlines that said, I was horribly offended by this incredibly important safety precaution announcement, and your flight attendant was making a mockery of the safety regulations. And if you don't fix this, I absolutely have to choose another airline. So Herb Kelleher looked at the letter, and in the margin on the side wrote, great, we will miss you, and mailed it back to the client. And the point is, what most companies do is they try to satisfy every customer. Do you realize that if you have your strategy nailed down, not only will you reject the customers that don't fit your culture, thereby alleviating your company of a lot of stresses and strains, but you'll attract the people that love the Southwest culture, using that example of the free spirit, high touch, fun environment. So you want your strategy to be nailed down to reject customers you don't want, and in many cases employees you don't want, and bring on employees and customers that you do want. And that's why strategy is so important. And that's why Patrick and I are excited to share this with you, because if you get this right, those three words that we've been hammering home will definitely start happening naturally.
So let's actually dig into, I think, some case study here, because I think that's the best way to understand this. I philosophized about this. We spoke abstractly about it, Rick and I, quite a bit. And I kept saying, well, tactics are this, but, strategy is that, et cetera, and purpose is this, and trying to tease off the difference between the two. And then here's objectives, how you separate these things. And you can really get confused over trying to mix these things together, as we said earlier. But when you really break it down in the simplistic way that Rick does, and I want you to really pay attention to something he said. Once you lock in on strategy, it doesn't change. And we started going back actually even through our own business experiences, friends of ours' business experiences, and looking at how when people deviated from their strategy, and many times it wasn't like it was a strategy that was really conscious, like they said, here is our focus strategy, but you can just say by the way they launched, this is strategically what they were looking to do. And then they kept changing it, change it again, change it again. Suddenly the businesses always stayed in a compromised reactionary predicament. So strategy has to be taken very, very seriously. It has to be, you're going to think it through so much that you're going to lock it in, and your tactics might change, your objectives might change, you might change a lot of things, but you're not going to change the strategy, because the strategy is literally the nucleus of your business or any business, and should be. So let's give some case studies so we can actually talk about, like Southwest, I think is one we want to do. I think Amazon was another one that you want to discuss. So let's talk about real case study out there, looking at strategy, how it applied, how people held the line on strategy and created very successful businesses as a consequence of doing that.
Before we jump into that, because I want to respond, I want to add on to what you just said. When you lock in a strategy and you keep it permanent, there becomes a well-worn path between the customer and you start to build a moat around your business. As you think about Southwest Airlines, don't you realize that American Airlines and United Airlines, companies that have dealt with bankruptcy, don't you realize that they know Southwest's strategy? But since Southwest stuck to it, their well-worn path between the customers and the company got so deep, so it was hard for Southwest Airlines competitors to jump into the no-frills airline like they did, and they owned. So Patrick's point is a big one. Take the time to figure out your strategy and do not deviate from it. So let's go.
I want to make a comment on that also, incidentally. Being a flyer, and I've flown over 2 million miles, well over 2 million miles in my lifetime, one of the things I noticed is that with Southwest's success, other airlines started creating divisions. I don't know if you remember, like United's TED, and Delta had, I'm trying to remember what it was.
Song,
yeah, Song, that's exactly right. They said, listen, we are unwilling to give up our current strategy. We can't do that. They couldn't abandon their current strategy, identity, etc. They were afraid for that, but at the same time, they saw the merit of what Southwest was doing. So they said, oh, what we could do is have it both ways. We can create a division of our airline that is a new sub-brand, basically, that will go and compete with Southwest while we continue to do what we do because we're afraid to let go over here. And so often, moving ahead and succeeding is not more about what can you do, it's more about what you can let go of, which is the harder part for the majority of people. Bottom line is this, they still didn't succeed with it. They still didn't become Southwest because it's got to be in the soul of the business, not a reactionary thing and say, okay, well now we have one division over here with one strategy, another division over here with another strategy. It becomes schizophrenic, and they're driving themselves crazy trying to be, again, all things to all people, as compared to saying, we're making a firm commitment, our line is in the sand, this is who we are and what we do. This is, what we do. These are the people we're going to serve. This is how we're going to deliver to them. Rather than just deciding on those factors, committing to it, and moving forward based on that, they tried to have their cake and eat it too, and it doesn't work.
I need to pick up here and say this. We receive a lot of calls from people that are in the program, and they say, why don't you do this, and why don't you do that, and why don't you offer it on iPod so I could listen to the modules when I work out, and what I try to tell them is, look, finishing school is designed for people that want to sit in front of a computer and really learn information. It's not designed to be listened to passively while you're working out. It also is designed for people that want to get it right, which is why we have implementation guides. It's also designed for people that really want long-term change, which we're going to talk about in the next module, but it's designed in a way to deliver information that's received, that's locked down. It also has an accountability component. So I want you to realize that there's a lot of aspects of this business that you're now engaged with that Patrick and I thought about. And every time one of you calls and says, what can you do about this, and can you fix this, and can you fix that? The response you'll hear from the company is us telling you, look, here's our business strategy, and we want you to engage in that strategy as it's been laid out. So we also need to practice what we preach in the business. So if every time somebody called to change this or change that, and we changed, we're actually violating the exact thing we're trying to teach you. So for those that have watched the modules at a rhythmic time every week and done the homework at the same time every week, I love those phone calls. You call me up, you're excited, you're telling me that your revenue doubled, you're telling me that you've never had more full engagement by your employees, you're telling me that you are living simplicity and probability and success and leverage. What was interesting is when I talk to someone in the program who's not doing that, they're saying, oh, I wish the program was this, I wish the program was that. And that's very interesting. So for those that align with our strategy, that are watching this program fully engaged with that strategy, you are probably enjoying far more success than you realize you would achieve.
And incidentally, I guess we're starting with us rather than Southwest, which is great. Our what is a monthly membership business learning culture. And that's why when people come and say, like, Rick, one of the things we get is, well, can't I just get access to all the modules if I want to do them faster? No. What we sell, our strategy, the what, is a monthly membership business learning culture. How we deliver that is through the online modules, implementation guides, teleseminars, the private Facebook group, the once-a-year live business program that we do. So we have our how very well regimented. We don't want to deviate from that. So you start to see now that what, how, there's a bunch of other ways we could do it. And here's the real thing to know. The other ways aren't wrong. They could be right. But if we don't have our own strategy, if we don't have our own model for how we're going to do this, then we start doing it all different ways. It becomes confused, it becomes defocused, it becomes destabilized, it becomes schizophrenic, and that's the opposite of the three key words that Rick is beating into your head every single month: simplicity, probability, and leverage. If you have a waffling strategy, or no strategy at all, you have the opposite of simplicity, you have the opposite of probability as far as success, and you have no leverage. So that was a brief look at our what and how. Rick gets very passionate about the who. So Rick, tell him about who we want to attract into our business.
Okay. Number 3 is people that are comfortable learning in an online environment. That it's, you have to understand, because we have people call us and say, can you do this on the phone, or can I hire you to come into my office, or can you, as Pat said, just send us all of the videos? And the answer is no. It's delivered this way. So we want a customer that is learning oriented, that is growth oriented, that is positive in nature, that has an entrepreneurial spirit, and doesn't mind learning this way. It's a very specific customer. So I wanted to make sure to address that. In the implementation guide, we're going to clearly lay out these 1, 2, and 3 components of strategy. So go ahead, Pat.
So now let's talk about some big company or big brand examples of business strategy and how it helped companies succeed. You're already talking about Southwest. Is there anything more you want to add about Southwest before maybe we talk about another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about one component of Southwest Airlines. You have to understand that when they started about 40 years ago, 40 some odd years ago, they originally started with a back of a napkin strategy. From inception, they had a 737 to worry about. That's it. Now think about that as a strategy and why that moat was so deep and that well-worn path for the company was so deep. American Airlines had, I'm told, 15 different type of airplanes. So when an airplane broke, okay, they'd have to have 15 times as many parts. They'd have to have mechanics that understood all the different planes. Of course, that's not likely, so they'd have to have a multiple number of mechanics. As you pointed out, Patrick, they had to have certain pilots because certain pilots are certified to fly certain planes. So their labor costs were higher. Now, contrast that with Southwest Airlines. One type of plane. All the mechanics knew that plane inside and out. All of the pilots knew that plane inside and out. All of the flight attendants knew that plane inside and out. And guess what? All of the customers knew that plane inside and out. They even had their favorite seats. So that's an example of what do we make and sell, how do we sell it, and to whom do we sell it. I combined all those three into just one piece of their strategy. So again, I don't care if you're a single person entity or you're a Fortune 500 company. We've got a lot of large companies watching these modules too. Strategy is incredibly important. It's very important to nail it down. The what, the how, and the to whom or the who. Three things.
And I want to just highlight your core value and a principle that was taught in the first year in the basic principle modules, and that principle of simplicity. Now you can see how somebody would say, wow, there's a principle called simplicity, and now we have to create strategy. Let's apply that principle to our strategy as we create it. So now you start to see how you go from the founding principles that you've learned and then say when it's time to create a strategy, start thinking about new profit paradigms, start thinking about simplicity, start thinking about catalyze, start thinking about all the things that you learned and how they might apply to the strategy. But that one little thing that you said, I think is profound. Look at the chaos and complexity having so many different aircraft puts upon big airlines like Continental, Delta, etc., and look at how having one aircraft simplifies the airline business in an enormous way. And you might say, yes, it limits how far they can fly, what countries they can go to, etc., because it's just the one aircraft. But when you got to be willing again to let go of certain things in order to have success, and that's one of the things that Southwest figured out.
Yeah. So let me move on to another company that you all know of, Amazon, Amazon.com. The interesting thing about Amazon is when you understand what their initial strategy was, you'll probably be as amazed as I was. And it's interesting that their name is Amazon. But what Jeff Bezos started out with was, I need to find a product or service that I can sell online as an initial strategy so that later, as time goes on and years go on, it will be the Amazon of the internet. And what he ultimately wanted to achieve was a website that you can buy any product, anytime, and it could be FedExed to your door. But where his initial strategy started, a lot of people don't realize, is this. He wanted to find a product that was easy to inventory, small, that a lot of people, in fact, almost everybody wants to buy, and get this, you don't pay taxes when you buy it, and it has lower shipping costs than other products. And what product is that? A book. A lot of people don't realize this, but when you buy a book, you actually get special rates. So it's a lot cheaper to ship a book by weight than it is many other products. And what his strategy was built around was, once I get anchored into people's lives and they get into the habit of buying books online, I can then expand it to other products. Here's another interesting fact. It took Amazon an enormous amount of time and money. They burned billions of dollars before they got to profitability. Jeff Bezos knew that he was going to be tempted to change his strategy because I don't know if a lot of people realize this. They faced bankruptcy for many years, but he stuck to his strategy. That is a perfect example of what most people don't do. They abandon their strategy. They change. They say, maybe we should do this type of customer. Maybe we should do this kind of product. Maybe we should change this delivery mechanism. So let's just untangle Amazon for the next few minutes and wrap this section up. I really want this to be hammered home for you. And what I've realized and the feedback I've gotten from some of you is your materials are so simple. Once we got it, and you don't have to belabor the point. So I appreciate that feedback, and we're responding to that. Amazon, what do you sell? So again, we're focused on the first 5 years of their existence. What they sell is books online delivered through the mail. So what don't they do? They don't do any other types of products. They don't do any brick and mortar, so they didn't franchise. They made sure that they didn't have distribution warehouses all over the place. They had massive warehouses that were concentrated, okay? Did they take phone orders? No, they did it over the internet. So that's what they did. What channel did they do it in? In other words, how did they deliver it? Very clear. They used the internet, okay? Number 3, to whom did they sell it? They sold it to people that had a computer connected to the internet. At the time, it was less than 10% of the population. So they only had to focus on that 10%. A lot of people get confused on strategy and they want to see how they could sell it to more people. Amazon is a multi-billion-dollar market and they focused on a very, very small area. They had some good fortune because internet usage increased, but that was part of the strategy. They already knew that. So we just took a massive company like Amazon that started with one person that is now employing many thousands of people. And because they honored the 3 things that we're talking about right now that you can too, they became a massive company.
I remember Jeff Bezos being on the cover of Time magazine, literally was pockets inside out. I don't know if you remember that a while ago, because Amazon, it was a land grab. You know, they kept raising more and more money, burning it while they were trying to get, do the land grab on the internet, create the brand name, but also stick to their strategy. And I can only imagine all these investors, especially these big institutions, trying to force him away from the core strategy to get to profitability faster, et cetera. But he stuck to his guns, exactly like Rick said. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things to do in business is that, when you're in trouble, when the chips are down, one of the hardest things to do is to keep confidence and belief in your strategy and stick to it and see it through. And I think one mistake that people make is that they don't recognize one thing. If you've already spent a bunch of money in your strategy, when you abandon it, you're starting over with dollars on a new strategy, which you're going to have to sink even further into again, as compared to saying, we've got sunk cost into the strategy, just let's stay with it, and over time we'll leverage that into profit, as compared to starting over again and having to go for more investment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Amazon's a great story, because look at how simple that strategy is explained, but look at the size and the scope and the worldwide impact of the company. So that's what we mean by strategy.
I'm glad that you took it that way, because oftentimes as business owners, we have advisors, we have Wall Street,
Yes.
we have people telling us change, change, change. Do you know why they tell you that? Because they don't understand business strategy. So I would encourage you, if you're dealing with that, if you have outside pressure from your spouse or your employees or some larger institutions like your banker, show them this video. Show them the video and say, look, here's the strategy we picked, and here's how we're going to take it to market, and this is what we're doing. Because as Patrick just pointed out, oftentimes you start in a business, you start creating a moat, and a moat is the water around a castle to protect your business from invaders. That moat gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and then all of a sudden, you've invested sunk costs into that moat. Now you change strategy. You're starting to build a brand new moat again. That costs money. And companies go from moat to moat to moat, and it's crazy. So what's the key thing with this module? Take the time to crystal clearly define your strategy and then stick to it. I think the problem is people don't take the time to do it. So that's what we're trying to get across to you. Take the time, do it right, and then stick to it. Any final comments, Pat?
I think that's it. I think what we'll do now is get into the applications in the next section and talk about how to apply this to your business.
Well, now we're getting into applications of my personal favorite module. And why is it my personal favorite? Because this leverages everything you've learned before and everything you will learn in the future. Strategy.
Yeah, he gets so excited. Every module is his personal favorite when we're doing it because he gets so excited about the information. So this is his current favorite until next month.
Well, the truth is my purpose in life is to inspire entrepreneurship. And I love coming up here and filming this in the studio with you, Patrick. So yes, anytime where I'm on purpose, I love it. So what I want to do is read the dictionary definition of strategy to start off the applications. So here's a dictionary definition. It's a noun, and it says, the science or art of combining and employing the means of war in planning and directing large military operations. That's definition number one. And here's definition number two. A plan, method, or series of maneuvers or stratagems for obtaining a specific goal or result. That's pretty interesting. What we're putting in place for you now, and what the implementation guide will hammer home, is exactly that. A plan so that you could produce outcomes in the most efficient, leverageable way. So why don't we get started? What you first have to do is print your implementation guide and look at it. There's a section in there that goes over the first section of strategy as it relates to this program. So the first section is what? What do you sell? What do you make? What do you sell? All of that. So how do you want to go, Patrick?
Well, I think now it's a matter of how do you make this come to life. We're talking about now creating strategy for your business. I imagine that the majority of you who are looking at this are already in a business. And maybe your strategy is fairly well clarified, but it never hurts to take it to the next level. And maybe this is the first time you're looking at strategy at all and saying, ooh, I never did this kind of an exercise before. I think the best thing to do is to get a dose of reality. And by doing that, I would take the key people who are stakeholders in your business, obviously you as the business leader, if that's who you are. Take your employees, if you have a lot of employees, take your key employees, your executive team at least, and any other people, investors, stakeholders, vendors, whomever it might be that you think know your business or should know your business. And then you're going to get them together, call a meeting basically, block out some time, and you're going to go through a process. And a part of that process is you're going to ask these questions about what, how, and who. So you start with what, and I think that you should go to each person in the exercise and say, what I want you to do is to sit down and answer this question. What does our business deliver? What does it do, basically? What does it deliver to its clients, customers, patients, etc.?
And I want to challenge them here, though, Patrick. On this question, they have to have at least 10 attributes. And they're thinking 10 attributes. And the reason is, whenever I explain this to somebody, I was recently talking to a dentist. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I fill cavities. That's what I do. I said, nonsense. Let's keep going. And when he realizes that his strategy could be way more defined, productive, and leverageable if, for example, he only focused on veneers as an example. I said, what's your most profitable business or aspect of your business? What clients do you like dealing with the most? Who pays you the most without complaint? And what he realizes, the what for his business is veneers. That's the what. And he realized if he got rid of everything else and he just focused on that, because this is something that he's really, really good at, he could have those three words: simplicity, probability, and leverage. What I want to make crystal clear to you on this section right now, talking about the what, is don't dismiss it. As an example, here's what I mean. Talking to a realtor in the realty industry, or talking to a dentist, a realtor will say, well, I sell houses, that's what I do. Or a dentist will say, I fill cavities. Well, I have a dentist friend, and when I really boiled this down with him, I said, yeah, you sell cavity protection, or you sell fixing cavities. That's what you do. But let's look at your business. What else do you do? And we started thinking about all the other things that he does. And I started asking more questions. what's the most profitable part of your business? And he said, well, putting veneers on teeth. And who is the best customer when you're delivering that? And we started thinking and boiling it down, and what he realized is his strategy should be, I put veneers on teeth and I do it better than anyone in the world. And that will make me more profitable, more leveraged, more successful, okay, with a higher probability of success. The what is more than just we do X. And I would force you, and I am forcing you, to think about 10 components of your what, not just I do this. So on the implementation guide, you'll see we want you to really build out that what and get crystal clear. And I like what Patrick said. Get your team together. Don't let them collaborate on it. See what they say that you sell. And then define it as one what component of your overall strategy.
Yeah, and this is a very tough thing. It sounds easy, but let me explain how it gets pretty difficult pretty quickly. Number one, I just want to underscore what Rick just said. I would like to get you a dose of reality by having these people individually write down their answers and look at them and see how different they all are or how similar they all are. If they're similar, you're doing a great job on your strategy. If they're different, you don't have a good strategy in place. Secondly, what Rick just said I think is absolutely right. Somebody who's already in a business like a dentist, chiropractor, what have you, any business you might be in. What happens is you're looking at this and you're saying, well, here's what I do. And there's other things that I do also. And then you might say, this one jumps off the page and we should focus more on this for our strategy, like veneers in the example that Rick was talking about. However, when you look at history, one of the things you'll see is, for example, the rail industry, trains. They were in the train business. And then a revolution took over called cars. And suddenly trains, which were one of the biggest industries in the country, became somewhat marginalized compared to the car industry. If trains had decided that they were in the transportation business, those companies would probably own all of the car companies right now. They probably own the airlines right now because they would have been in the transportation business. What they do is provide transportation. So the question is, do you provide service to transport people via rail, or are you in the transportation business? And of course you can subdefine what that means. So here is the paradox here. If you go too broad and generalized and it's beyond your scope, you have a strategy that you'll never be able to fulfill. Yet if you go too narrow, you might not be able to really be future thinking enough, going into the future as far as your future pacing, where this might lead. So the scale of your business will have some impact on this. If you're a small practice, it's one thing. If you're a bigger business, it's another thing, etc. But there's a lot of consideration here to finally figure out how can you get to a what that's focused, that's edgy, that inspires, that's comfortable, that you can move forward with.
Yeah, and you really want to think about this example too, and I'm glad you brought that up, Pat. In the computer industry, we have Dell Computer and we have Apple Computer. And Apple's strategy is very defined around creating well-designed products that people love to use, and they're simple and easy and fun. That's part of their strategy. Dell Computer, on the other hand, is in the computer business, and they want to provide economical computers that work. Well, interestingly, they're both in the computer business.
Right.
But when Dell Computer tried to come out with a cell phone, nobody bought it. When Dell Computer tried to come out with a screen, nobody bought it. When Dell Computer first came out with a tablet computer, nobody bought it. Why? Because their well-defined moat strategy was around that desktop and laptop computer. So let's go over here. Apple comes out with an iPod. Well, that's not a computer. And people bought it up like hotcakes. Then they came out with the iPhone, and then the iPad, and then the music store. Why? Because their strategy is well accepted, and their moat is really deep, that they're going to provide easy to use, fun, well-designed products. So you could tell here how one company had one strategy that failed miserably when they tried to introduce new products, and one company over here, Apple, had a well-defined strategy that easily accommodated new strategically oriented products. So to Patrick's point, you have the opportunity to define your strategy any way you want. And that strategy can account for new products and things. That's why I wanted to bring that example to you. I want to jump to number 2 because we want to keep this real tight, but Patrick has to add one more thing.
A clue here to help you is your purpose, and you figure out the what and the rest of the strategy, quite frankly, but especially the what. Remember, what's the purpose, what's the catalyzing statement? Now from that should help rein in the what, help you make decisions there, basically give you the constraints or the framework for it so that you can come to a conclusion. And these are mega decisions. I mean, this is a commitment of your life and career is attached to how you answer these questions. And that's why I think people get a sense of them but kind of avoid a little bit. So we're going to ask you, as far as the application here, is to spend enormous time, energy, effort. This isn't a trivial exercise. This is literally at the heart of things here. Give this so much time and attention because the rest of your life and career is going to be affected by it in a big way. So let's get on to the next one.
Cool. So number 2. What is number 2? Why don't you answer the question for me? How are we going to deliver the product that we set out to create? Okay? So Patrick said it initially, what are we making to deliver, right?
Yep, the what?
Yep. Now, how are we going to deliver it? So going back to the Amazon example, how they're going to deliver it is with an online interface interacting with the customer, and they're going to use FedEx and as inexpensive as they possibly can services to deliver that product. So that's the how. We have to think for you, how are you going to deliver your service? If you are to go back to the example of a dentist, you're going to deliver it probably in your office environment, but maybe that's not true. I have a dentist friend who's created products that he sells to other dentists on DVDs, and he's been quite successful at it. So what business are you really in? And how are you going to deliver those services to your clients? So if you look at the implementation guide, we're really hammering home on this how. We want you to focus on it. Shed more light on it, Patrick.
So the how is a big challenge because of this. We live in a world that's changing very much technologically, and that technology is going to impact how you do things. If you're in a pre-computer, pre-fax, pre-cell phone world, etc., that's very different. So how do you account for those things? I think one of the things you have to do is look at the strategy and how from maybe a generic standpoint of efficiency. For example, if you are looking to buy a home, and you're working with a realtor. When you're working with a realtor today, how they deliver information to you with multiple listings, etc. You can get these things to your cell phone. You can get any number of things. I was looking at new expense reporting software, and man, they can get it right to your cell phone. You can just do things there. There's so many changes in technology that you have to be deliberate with the how to account for things that might change in the marketplace. Now, some things are going to be pretty simple. You're a chiropractic office. How you can deliver these services? Well, in part, it's going to be through the office, right? In part, it's going to be in your facility. But you also might do things outside your office, certain events, et cetera, because of a part of what you're delivering is education. That can happen in other formats. Obviously, I think everybody's utilizing the online format as a part of their how. So how can be a multifaceted thing, and it also must embrace the fact that technology and the behavior of people is changing. Therefore, you might have to modify that how moving forward. But you can generalize or characterize saying that we want our how is related to the most efficient manner of communication, blah, blah, blah. Or it might be you want to go the opposite way, saying we want to make sure that we deliver it in a way where it causes people to not be distracted as we deliver it. Give you the example that Rick gave about us earlier as far as what we do here in finishing school. Reality is we could deliver finishing school in other ways, how we get it to you, but because of what we're delivering, our how now has to change. We have to say our how has to be committed to less distraction. We don't want to necessarily go out and do it live to everybody through 100 cities in the world because there's no leverage there, and leverage is a part of what our core value is. So what we want to do is say we want to deliver it online to a computer to know that you're sitting at a desk with an implementation guide and could be doing this work. And as Rick cited earlier, we could have other hows on this, but we won't go there in our strategy because we think it will detract from the value and the experience that our customers will have. And we're fully aware, incidentally, that we'll lose customers because of the how, but we're fine with that because of what we want, what we want to deliver, the value of it. The how is going to define many times what customers are going to be attracted to it. So this is, again, a somewhat complex, maybe somewhat multifaceted issue as far as how you're going to deliver this. But if you take enough time to think it through, look at companies that you admire, that you patronize, literally services that you use, how do they deliver to you and what do you like about that? And then you can incorporate that into your own business model.
One thing Patrick said that I want you to understand, using this business as an example, is I was recently talking to somebody who's made many millions of dollars selling prepackaged DVDs in a box set. And I'm having lunch with this gentleman, and he said, why don't you just put all these modules in a box set, send it to people? And he said, you know what? No one ever listens to my programs. They sit in a box in the closet, but I get thousands of dollars per program. And I said, that's the difference in our strategy. We actually care that you interact with these programs and that you actually become an inspired business person. So our strategies are different. I'm not interested in you buying something and putting it in a box in your closet. Another thing is, on the how section, it definitely is where marketing sits. This is the section that has marketing in it. So I want to be clear on that. The implementation guy will talk more about that. But Patrick was talking about, we're delivering this online. Amazon's online, therefore their marketing's online. They have a crystal clear marketing. I have yet to see an Amazon infomercial, for an example. So incorporate it in your strategy. This section, the how section, is your marketing. You don't want to keep trying new and different things. He and I have had some interesting exchanges about that, where we were talking about different ways to market this program as an example. I'm like, look, this is the strategy, this is how we're marketing it, and that's it. So let's move on to number 3 so we don't belabor the point too much. To whom are you selling your product or your service? Who? And this is probably the easiest one, not because you're going to do it in a quick amount of time, but because once you nail it, you could define it, and it really could stay in a nice tight box. So in this section, we want you to define the ideal customer. And oftentimes, when we define the ideal customer, it shrinks to a very small section of the economy or of the population. That's okay. If it's small, as you build and grow like Amazon did, your moat gets deeper, then you could expand out, maybe to people that are related to that customer.
I think the who is the fun part. Not that any of it's not fun necessarily, but this is a little bit more joyful because now you're thinking about the people you're going to be serving. Every business has to deliver value to people somehow and improve their lives, otherwise you don't have a business. And so this is the fun part where you get to say, wow, who are we going to be working with? Who are we going to be interacting with here? Who are we going to be delivering happiness to or these services to or what have you? So you get to really color up your business in a big way here by sitting down and saying, what customers you have now? If you're in a practice, who are my favorite patients? What are their common characteristics? What do they have in common that I could try to define into a literal business strategy? And I'll say that, piggybacking what Rick said just a little bit earlier, is that the who is also going to very much define your marketing strategy, because once you know who you're targeting, who your ideal customer is, you're going to market there and not market in places where those people don't exist. You're not going to spend money on marketing dollars to market in a place where these people don't. And when you're casting wide nets in your marketing, like I know in doctor's offices, chiropractic office, again, kind of my expertise, or dental offices, what have you, when you just have general ads like in Yellow Pages, etc., they're not nearly as good as far as bringing in who you want as going to an area, going to a group, going to a place where people convene who are your ideal customer. And there's no right or wrong here. You get to make it up as you would like to see it, and this is going to contribute to your experience a lot as an entrepreneur or business person. Business strategy is one thing in this second 12 modules of finishing school that really puts the afterburners on as far as business acceleration. And that's why I'm really excited about this do these exercises. This is an accelerator. When you get this business strategy down for your business, it's going to accelerate like you never could have imagined before.
So thank you for allowing us to share with you our beliefs around strategy. And if you can employ this module into your business and take the time to do that, we promise you that you will definitely add simplicity, probability, and leverage to your life, both business-wise and personal, because you have less stress over here. Thanks for watching this module.
Thank you for watching this module of Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started.